بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, last lesson we talked about the mandatory things in Salah, which is the wajibat. We said that if you accidentally forget a wajib, then you must do the sajda of forgetfulness, which is the sajda to sahu. And if you don't, or you purposefully do not do a wajib, then we said that the prayer has to be repeated either during or after the time, and that repeating is also wajib. Now, inshallah, we're moving on to the sunnahs. So everything we're about to read today, if you don't do it, your prayer is still valid. Of course, if you've done the fard and the wajibat. So that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. Obviously, these are the sunnahs, which means that if the Prophet ﷺ, our beloved master, used to do this. And it's his path, it's his way. So that's why we put a lot of importance onto sunnahs. After the sunnahs, we're also going to read about the adabs, which also should be done. Shortly before uttering the tahrima, Allahu Akbar, for a man to raise his hands to the level of his ears, and a woman should raise them to shoulder level. So a man does it like this, a woman does it like this. Now, the fingers should be spread. Okay, they shouldn't be joined together. Neither should they be absolutely spread like this. A normal position, but the fingers shouldn't be like this, is what it's trying to say. They should be spread so that both the fingers and the palms are facing the Qibla. The fingers should be spread, i.e. not clenched, with the palm. With the palm face of the hands facing the direction of prayer. The head should not be lowered whilst uttering Allahu Akbar. For the Imam, so all of this, what did we say? This is Sunnah. So if someone says Allahu Akbar without raising their hands, they can start their Salah that way. Okay? For the Imam to utter Allahu Akbar aloud to the extent required to notify the congregation that he has entered prayer or that he has moved to the following position. What does it say? It says it's Sunnah. Okay? So if the Imam forgets, then the Salah is still valid. The same applies for uttering Sami'allahu liman hamidah and the closing salam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Okay? Why is this important? Because sometimes, for example, this has happened to me about 3 or 4 times when I'm getting up from ruku or I'm about to move from one position to the next and I was leading the prayer. As I'm saying Allahu Akbar, something gets stuck in my throat. And because I don't want to stop the movement, I carry on doing the movement and I forego the takbir. So the Jama'ah gets a little bit confused because they see you go into ruku without saying Allahu Akbar, for example. But after a couple seconds, everybody understands and they go into ruku. But like I said, this is a sunnah. If he exceeds this level of volume, but without being unduly excessive, it is disliked. So the Imam should only be loud enough for the Jama'at to hear him. Okay, the Imam shouldn't be screaming. Also, the masjids shouldn't have their microphones on max volume all the time. It is unduly excessive, if it is unduly excessive, so if the Imam is really shouting Allahu Akbar, so that he is yelling to attain melody and the acclaim of people, and he does not intend the dhikr, the prayer is invalidated. Okay, so he invalidates the salah. So not only his, but the whole jama'ah's salah is ruined. The prayer is invalid if he only intends to notify people when uttering the tahrima. So when saying Allahu Akbar and starting Salah, if the intention of the Imam is only to notify the people, then this intention isn't the correct intention for starting Salah. He should make the intention to say Allahu Akbar as in the dhikr, the tahrima, Allahu Akbar, and also to just say it loud enough to notify the people. So his intention should be both. As for when he intends the tahrima and notifying others, this is good. The same ruling applies to the relayer, the muballigh. Sometimes when the jama'ah is big and the people in the back, they cannot hear the imam, somebody around the middle will be a muballigh. So when the imam says Allahu Akbar, he also shouts Allahu Akbar so that the people in the back saf, in the back rows, can hear him. Now if the muballigh intends only to notify people, but he doesn't intend the dhikr, then the muballigh's salah is invalid. But of course, because he's not the imam, nobody else's salah would be invalid. Now it's sunnah for the tahrima of the follower, the one praying behind the imam, to be simultaneous with the tahrima of his imam. Okay, but you have to be careful that you don't do it before the imam. So if the imam is saying Allahu Akbar, you need to make sure you don't say Allahu Akbar before the imam because the salah hasn't started. Okay? So you should do it at the same time, but obviously with like a 1 or 2 second delay. To place the right hand on top of the left one, below the navel, whilst gripping the left hand with the thumb and little finger of the right hand. Okay, for men, we do it like this. Right hand goes on top of the left. You make a circle with your pinky and your thumb. You grab it like this. The 3 fingers lie on the arm like this. The reason we do this is because there are 2 hadiths on how to hold the hands in prayer. One of them says to just hold it like this, to cover the wrist, to grab the wrist. One is to just place your hand on top. And because both hadiths are sound, Imam Abu Hanifa, he didn't want to leave one hadith in case he got it wrong. And because both hadiths are sound, he applied both of them at the same time. So we place our hand on top of our other hand, and we also grab the wrist. So according to the hadith, we're also grabbing the wrist and we're placing our right hand on top of the left. A woman places her hands, without gripping, on the chest underneath the breasts. 6. To utter the opening supplication, thana, and the ta'awudh at the beginning of the first unit only. Okay? So when you first start your salah in the first raka'ah, you read Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik wa tabarak ismuk wa ta'ala jadduk wa la ilaha ghayruk. Now if what you are reciting, if what you are reading, if the prayer itself is a janazah, you add وَجَلَّ ثَنَاؤُكَ. So you would say سُبْحَانَكَ اللَّهُمَّ وَبِحَمْدِكَ وَتَبَارَكَ اسْمُكَ وَتَعَالَى جَدُّكَ وَجَلَّ ثَنَاؤُكَ وَلَا إِلَهَ غَيْرُكَ. Okay, this is what we call the thana dua. And the ta'awudh is أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ. This is only read in the first raka'ah. So سُبْحَانَكَ اللَّهُمَّ وَبِحَمْدِكَ and أَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ is read in the first raka'ah only. For recitation of the Quran, and the basmala at the beginning of each unit in every single unit. So first, second, third and fourth, you read the basmala, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Like we said, this is sunnah. So if you forget the subhanaka, if you forget the a'udhu, if you forget the basmala, your salah is still valid. And you do not need to do the sajda of sahu, the forgetfulness sajda. Okay? It is also sunnah to utter the ameen and the praise, which is Rabbana lakal hamd. The affirmation formulas are recited to one's self, so not out loud. Okay? The other madhabs say ameen out loud, but the Hanafis, we say ameen loud enough to hear yourself, just like everything else in salah. And Rabbana lakal hamd again, the same after ruku'. So, Ameen means answer our supplication. So, this one's a bit high. 15.0 is. I'll open that up through this book here. Let's have a read on what happens if you read Ameen out loud. So the following are key proofs for uttering the Ameen inaudibly, so quietly. Tirmidhi narrated from Shu'bah that the Prophet ﷺ recited, "Not of those against whom thou art wrathful, nor of those who are astray." So so he finished Surah Al-Fatiha and then said Ameen with a lowered voice. Commenting upon this, Tirmidhi cites Bukhari's opinion that the narration of Sufyan is sounder, asah, than Shu'bah's, and the words with a lowered voice should be with a raised voice, as has been reported in other narrations. This opinion is echoed by many scholars of hadith. So while we take the hadith, there are the opinion, like we said, the other madhahib, they do it out loud. But we take this hadith which says that the voice is quietly. The Prophet ﷺ said it quietly. Another one, Ahmad, Daruqutni, and Hakim also narrates Shu'bah's hadith, and Hakim said it is rigorously authenticated, which means it is sahih. Rukmani notes that uttering Ameen inaudibly is the viewpoint of Umar and Ali and Tabari. And Tabari said it is the opinion of Ibn Mas'ud, Nakha'i, Shu'bi, and Ibrahim at-Timi. Okay, and Nakha'i is the teacher of Imam Abu Hanifa. So that's where we would get that fatwa from, that hukum from. Further, Turkmani said the reports for both positions are rigorously authenticated. So both of them are sahih. So saying it quietly and saying it out loud. And adopted by a group of scholars, although the position of reciting inaudibly was adopted by a majority of the companions and successors. Okay? Tabarani narrated that Ali and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhum ajma'in were also of this opinion. Haythami said that the narrator for this is reliable, thiqa, and mudallis. Abdul Razak also narrated this opinion from the two successors, Ibrahim Nakha'i and Ata. Ata is Ata ibn Rabiha. Sorry, Ata ibn Rabah. So, this is just the hadith for reciting it inaudibly. So if someone does recite it out loud, that is according to the other madhahib. But for our madhab, we recite it quietly. The reason I went into a bit of detail in this one, because as men would know, usually in the UK, when you go to the masajids and the imam says finishes Fatiha, the whole jama'ah says Ameen out loud. And because a lot of the Hanafis, they don't know the books, they also recite it out loud with the jama'ah. But if they were to follow the madhab properly, they would know that they have to say it quietly. In the Fajr prayer only, the recitation in the first unit to be longer than the second. Okay, and this is Fajr prayer only. So in the Fajr prayer, you should recite something long, let's say quite long, very long, and in the second raka'ah, just long. So Fajr prayer should be a long salah. First raka'ah should also be longer than the second one. Uttering Allahu Akbar whilst moving into the bowing position, and then saying 3 times Subhana Rabbiyal Azim. Okay, so if someone forgets to say Allahu Akbar whilst going into ruku, they've missed a sunnah. So saying Subhana Rabbiyal Azim 3 times is a sunnah. In the bowing position, to grip the kneecaps with the fingers spread apart, legs straight, and the head at the same level as the rear end. This is for men. Okay, so their back should be straight, is what it's saying. So they shouldn't be on an incline like this. Some people do it too much. Some people don't do it enough. Just right is 90 degrees. A woman does not spread apart her fingers nor grip her knees. Rather, she closes her fingers and places them on the knees, bending the knees without pushing out her upper arms. I'm going a bit fast because these are things that we should all already know. To utter the praise and Rabbana lakal hamd, optimally saying Allahumma Rabbana wa lakal hamd. The tasmi' is to utter Sami Allahu liman hamida. Okay, so all of this is sunnah. The imam and the one praying alone utter both the tasmi' and the tahmid. So if you're the imam or you're praying alone, you say Sami Allahu liman hamida, Allahumma Rabbana wa lakal hamd. But if you're following the imam, you only say Allahumma Rabbana wa lakal hamd. Okay. Uttering a takbir to move into prostration and getting up from prostration. So saying Allahu Akbar when going to sajda and Allahu Akbar when rising from sajda. Uttering the tasbih Subhana Rabbiyal A'la 3 times, obviously where? In sajda. To prostrate between one's hands. Men should keep the stomach and thighs, the elbows, the sides of the forearms and the ground apart. Okay, so your arms shouldn't be stuck on your body. Neither should they be on the floor. Your thighs and your stomach shouldn't be touching each other. They should be separated. So your sajda should be big. Men, we think of your sajda as a lion. You should be big and out there. To place the hands on the thighs during the sitting between, and the women do the exact opposite of this. Okay? So the women, they keep their arms tucked in, they keep their hands close to their face, and they keep their body as small as possible when they do sajda. Men, they do the opposite. They show themselves. Women, they hide themselves. To place the hands on the thighs during the sitting between the 2 prostrations, as one does during the tashahhud. So when you get up from sajda, your hands should be on your thighs, just like your hands should be on your thighs when you are reciting at-tahiyyatu in the first and last sitting. For a man to lay down the left foot on its left side and the right foot raised up, so your heel is up, and the toes of your right foot facing the direction of prayer. Okay, so this is the way a man sits. You sit on your left leg with your right leg on your side with your right foot up. Okay, the female adopts what we call the tawarruk position, where she sits on her buttocks, the right thigh placed on the other thigh, and the left leg drawn out from under her right hip. Okay, if you need, if you're curious about how this is and you don't actually know this or no one's ever taught you before, then you should search a YouTube video. Make sure to write in Hanafi, although I believe all of the madhahibs, the women sit the same. But make sure to type in Hanafi and to see how this is done. To point the index finger during the tashahhud after clasping the fingers or forming a ring, raising it upon the negation and lowering it upon affirmation. So let's stay here for a second. Let's explain this for a second. Now, when we say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. So you either do it like this. Let's see if we can. So your hand is on your thigh. And when you say Ashhadu an, you either clasp your hand like this, and you do this. Ashhadu an la ilaha, down. La, up. Ilaha, down. Okay, like this. And you open up your hand again. Okay. Or you can, instead of clasping your hand like this, you form a ring like this. Okay, so you go from this, Ashhadu an la. So if you look sideways, I formed a ring. Okay, Ashhadu an la ilaha. La ilaha. So when you say ilaha, your finger should be down. You say la, raises it, ilaha, lowers it. Okay, this is important. Why? Because it carries a meaning. And there are reports from scholars that say if you raise your finger at the wrong moment, because it carries a meaning, you're changing the meaning of what you're saying, and therefore your salah could be invalidated. That's why we say either you do this properly or you don't do it at all, because it's a sunnah. Okay, a lot of scholars have opined that this isn't a sunnah. There are many different ways of doing this. There are many different hadiths about doing it. Some say they carry on doing this. Some 12. Some, when they put it down, they leave it down like this instead of like this. So there are many ways of doing this. So if we go to 182, yeah, this is going to send us all the way to that, and that's going to be a bunch of ahadith. Okay, so at the end of this book, it tells you a lot of the hadiths which we have gotten these rulings from. So if you do purchase this book, okay, which I highly recommend, everybody should have this book in their house. It's a very good work. It tells you here, for example, 182, that you need to go to I-17, which is towards the end of the book, and there it will tell you the hadith mentioning this finger raising. It is most optimal to recite the opening chapter, which is Al-Fatiha, in the standing position after the first 2 units of the ritual prayer. The next most preferable option is to utter the tasbih 3 times, with the least preferable being remaining silent to the extent of 3 tasbihat. One has a choice between the 3, and if one restricts oneself to remaining silent to the extent of 3 tasbihat, it suffices. Okay? Now, when we're talking about the fard salah, if you remember, we said it is, you only have to recite in the first 2 rak'ahs. The 3rd and 4th recitation is sunnah. Therefore, reciting Fatiha in the 3rd and 4th rak'ah of a fard salah is a sunnah, and it's most optimal, obviously, to recite Fatiha. If you want, you can do tasbih, okay? You can say something like Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, you can say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim, you can say Subhanallahi walhamdulillahi wa la ilaha illallah wallahu akbar 3 times, okay? With the least preferable being just remaining silent, okay? To the extent of 3 tasbihat. One has a choice between the 3. And if one restricts oneself to remaining silent to the extent of 3 tasbihat, it is enough. But you haven't done the sunnah, right? So 183. This does not mean that the 3 options are equal, obviously. Reciting the Fatiha is superior to the 3 tasbihs without doubt. Similarly, the 3 tasbihs are clearly superior to silence. Sending blessings upon the Prophet ﷺ in the final sitting. Okay, so after you have sat down, so in the first sitting you don't do it. Remember, in the first sitting, after you say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu, you're supposed to immediately stand up for the 3rd rak'ah. Why? Because we said that if you carry on sitting down long enough to say Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, then you have to do the forgetfulness sajda. Okay, so in salah, there's no waiting about. Once you've finished your tashahhud, you get up. Once you've finished your qira'ah, you go into ruku. Once you finish your ruku, you get up. Okay? You can't sit silently. Supplication, using words which resemble those of the Quran and Sunnah, not conversational human speech. This is in the last sitting. Okay? So you've done Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, and then you send salawat, which is Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala ali Muhammadin kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. And then you do dua. Now, this dua can be from the Quran, which is the best, but you can also, if you know Arabic, okay, not in English, if you know Arabic, you can do your own dua, but your dua should resemble that which is in the Quran and Sunnah. Like we said before, you should ask for forgiveness, you should ask for forgiveness, for good in the akhirah, good in this world. It should resemble Rabbana Atina, Rabbana Gfirli. But what it should not be is Rabbana, give me a Mercedes, give me a car, give me a house, things like this. You shouldn't be doing dua for worldly things, which is allowed outside of prayer. You can do as much dua as you want for worldly things, but inside of prayer you should be asking for other worldly things like rahmah and afu and ghafur, right? So it should resemble the du'as which are in the Quran and the Sunnah. To turn one's head right and then left with the two closing salams. Now, a little note here. Some people make the mistake of adding a third movement to the salam. So when you give the salam, so obviously you finish your tashahhud. When you give the salam to the right, it's a straight right movement. And then when you give a salam to the left, there's nothing in between. You go from right to left. Some people, they do like this. Some people, they do this. They stop in the middle. Now, while none of that invalidates the prayer, the correct way is you just give salam to the right, and then from the right, you go to the left. Okay? There's nothing in the middle that you do. Upon uttering the closing salams, for the imam to intend greeting his congregation, the guardian angels, and the righteous jinns. Okay? So the intention with saying Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, right? The imam should do intention of giving salam to the congregation, salam to the guardian angels, and the righteous jinn which are in the jama'ah. Okay? The follower intends, who does the follower intend? He intends the imam when he gives it the salam in his direction. So if he's on the left of the imam, when he turns his head to the right, he intends the imam and the jama'ah. Okay? If he's on the right side of the imam, then obviously he would, when he turns his head to the left, he would intend the imam. Or with both salams if he is directly behind the imam, the congregation, the guardian angels, and the righteous jinn. The one praying alone intends the angels only. Okay? And if you are able to see the jinn, then you intend for the jinn. But since we can't, then we only intend the angels. The imam's voice for the second closing salam is lower than the first. Okay, this is a sunnah. So when the imam is saying Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, the left salam is a slightly lower voice than the first one. The follower makes his closing salam simultaneously with the imam. Again, for those who go to the masjid, they'll see that the other madhahib, they do it after the imam has given the salam to the left, then they start giving salam to the right. But the Hanafis, we do it along with the imam. So as the salam is being given, we also turn our heads with the imam. If a latecomer to the prayer, who must make up missed units, performs salam, the following rules apply. If he forgetfully performed the closing salam before or simultaneously with the imam, the prostration of forgetfulness is not necessary. Okay? But if he forgetfully performed the closing salam after the imam, the prostration of forgetfulness is necessary. And if he performed the closing salam thinking he must do so, then this is a deliberate act that invalidates the prayer. So not knowing doesn't save you from anything in Islam. Okay? Not knowing something does not save you. In fact, in this instance, it's worse. So he did it on purpose because he didn't know better, right? It's worse. His prayer is invalidated. Okay? If he knew, at least he would have done it with the imam. He shouldn't have done it anyways. The reason it's different is, one, in this instance, so you're doing it with the imam, you're counted as being behind the imam. And when you're behind the imam, as in you're still a follower, any mistake you make, you don't do the sajda of forgetfulness. I forgot to say that in last lesson. The sajda of forgetfulness is only done if you're the imam or you're praying alone. Nobody behind an imam does the sajda of forgetfulness unless the imam is doing it. Okay? So for any mistakes you make in the salah, you don't do a sajda of forgetfulness. But it's still wajib for you to repeat that salah. Okay? Why? Because you've missed a wajib. Understood? So for example, if you recited behind the imam when you weren't supposed to be reciting, then for you repeating that salah is wajib, even though the imam hasn't made any mistake and the imam's salah is completely fine. You need to go and repeat that prayer as a wajib again because you've missed a wajib. Understood? So this is why if you do it with the imam, you don't have to do the forgetfulness sajda because you're still counted as a follower. But if you do it after the imam has given salam, then you're no longer a follower and you would have to do the forgetfulness sajda because it's your mistake. Okay? Now, upon uttering the closing salams, the imam intends to greet the congregation. We read that the imam's voice is lower than the first and we do it simultaneously. The closing salam is made on the right side first. This is sunnah. So if someone mixes it up, does left, and then remembers that they haven't done their right, then they can just do it to the right. They've only missed the sunnah, okay? The latecomer should not stand to complete his prayer until the imam has finished his salam. Why? It's quite obvious. Because if, for example, as soon as the imam starts giving salam, you stand up, and then the imam goes and does sajda of forgetfulness, what are you going to do? I've seen this happen. He stands immediately after the salam, and then the imam goes into sajda of forgetfulness, and he's left there standing while his imam is in sajda. This is why you should wait until the imam has finished his left salam or has started his left salam, which means he's not going to go into sajda of forgetfulness, so that you can stand and start praying your missed rak'ahs. Okay, for this one we have to switch PDFs. Okay. The adab of the prayer. Now, what we just read were the sunnahs. Okay, now we're moving on to one below. So what we did, remember we started with the fard. We explained all the conditions of salah and the fard. Then we explained the wajibs. Then we explained the sunnahs. And now we explain what is below the sunnahs, what we call the adab. Okay, these may be mubah, these may be mandub, these may be mustahab, these may be, there's a lot of different names, and they all have a rank in between themselves. So they're not all the same. Okay, but because it's too much detail to explain that this is a mandub and it's slightly better than a mustahab or vice versa or whatever, we just put them all into one category and we say these are the adab that you should be doing. Okay, now for a man, not a woman, to take his hands out of the sleeves of his shirt when performing the takbir of tahrima. Okay, so if he's doing the takbir and he's got really long sleeves like a monk, okay, he should take his hands out of his sleeves. Okay, so his hands should be visible. The worshipper looks at the following places during the prayer. When he's standing, he looks at where he's about to do sajda. When he's in ruku', he looks at the top of his feet. When he's in sajda, he looks at the tip of his nose. And when he's in his sitting position, he looks at his lap. Okay, and the right and left shoulder. When he's giving the salam, you look at your shoulder, not to the jama'ah. Okay? When one feels the urge to refrain from coughing for as long as possible, if one thinks it is possible to do so. Okay? Try to hold in your coughs. As for the one for whom coughing is unavoidable, refraining from coughing is impossible. Okay, for others, refraining is mandatory as coughing invalidates the prayer. Except if it is due to a legal excuse such as beautifying the voice or alerting others that one is praying. The same ruling applies to clearing the throat. This is very important. And a lot of people might not understand why you do this. And you might think this is a difficult ruling, but it's even more difficult in the Shafi'i madhab. Therefore, let's just unpack this. What does this mean? So basically, if you can hold back your cough, then you should, okay? But you can let it out. If it's impossible to, then it's impossible to, okay? Then you just let it out. Anything else, so if you cough for no reason, okay? There was no reason for you to cough. You just went, your salah is invalid. You're not allowed to make random noises in salah, okay? Same goes for clearing a throat, okay? If you go, right? Your salah is invalid for no reason. If you are doing it to beautify the voice, okay, then it is allowed. If you are doing it to alert others that you are praying, then it says here that it is allowed. Now, the Shafi'is, I believe, don't accept either of these. So even to beautify your voice, you're not allowed. And to let others know that you're praying, you're not allowed according to the Shafi'is. That's why when you're leading, if you're an imam, you should follow all four madhabs, and you should not clear your throat, even though you might get phlegm and your voice might sound terrible. Don't do it. Otherwise, the Shafis are going to have to repeat their prayer. Those who know. Now, when we say Shafis, most of the Shafis, they don't know these rulings. Hanafis don't know these rulings. Nobody knows these rulings. But alhamdulillah, as these lessons carry on and, inshallah, we'll revive this knowledge so that people know their own madhabs and when they have to repeat their prayers if necessary. To refrain from belching and to close the mouth when yawning. If unable to do so, he covers the mouth with the hand or sleeve. If he reminds himself that the Prophet ﷺ never yawned, the yawning is averted from him. So it's giving you a little tip here. If you remember that none of the Prophets yawned, ﷺ, then you won't yawn. Okay. If the Imam is near the niche, the mihrab, okay, of the mosque, so the Imam is close to the mihrab, he and the congregation stand when Hayya alal falah is said during the iqamah, okay, the commencement to prayer. Otherwise, each row stands as the Imam reaches them. Okay, you've never heard this before or seen this before, I guarantee you. Okay, if the Imam is already at the mihrab, when Hayya alal falah is read, okay, the Imam and the congregation stand. If the Imam is not at the mihrab, then the Jama'ah waits for the Imam because he is their Imam. This respect, okay? As the Imam passes each saf, that saf stands up. Okay? This is out of respect and veneration for their Imam. If the Imam enters from the front of the mosque, the congregation stands as their eyes fall upon him. Okay? However, if the Imam himself is making the commencement to prayer in the mosque, so the Imam is also the Mu'adhin, they do not stand until he has completed the commencement to prayer. So until he finishes the Iqamah, so not at Hayya ala al-Falah, but until he says La ilaha illallah, the Imam makes the commencement to prayer outside the mosque. Each row stands as the Imam reaches them again. Okay, so if the Imam is the Mu'adhin, then they wait until he finishes. If the Imam makes the commencement to prayer outside of the mosque, each row stands as the Imam reaches them. Okay. The Imam commences the prayer when it is said prayer is commencing. Okay, قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ. So they stand at Hayya ala al-Falah, and the Imam says Allahu Akbar when the Mu'adhin is saying قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ. Okay, so actually the Salah is started before the Iqamah is over. Understood? Now, do people do this nowadays? The Turkish mosques do this, but I haven't seen other mosques do this. Okay, so as the Mu'adhin is saying قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةُ قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةُ, the Imam goes Allahu Akbar. Okay? Okay, so let's combine all of that. Okay, so what does it look like when, sorry, let me just mute my phone. What does it look like when we put all of this together? When we put all of this together with the sunnahs and the adabs, the person, he has got his wudu. He's obviously got ghusl. No one walks around without ghusl anyways. Okay, he's got his ghusl, he's got his wudu. And he's clean, his clothes are clean. His place of prayer is clean. The salah time has entered. He is covered with clothes. And he faces the qibla. And then he raises his hands with the intention immediately. He says, I intend to pray, for example, let's say the fard of dhuhr for the sake and pleasure of Allah. And then immediately after the intention, he says, Allahu Akbar. And he holds his hands like this. Okay, women, they hold their hands like this, just below the breasts. The men, we hold it below the navel. Then you say, Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik wa tabarak ismuk wa ta'ala jadduk. And if it's a janazah, you say, wa jalla thana'uk wa la ilaha ghayruk. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. And then you recite Al-Fatiha. After the Fatiha, you recite a surah. And then you say Allahu Akbar. You go into ruku. In ruku, you say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim 3 times. Then you say Sami'a Allahu liman hamidah as you're getting up. And Rabbana wa lakal hamd. Or Allahumma Rabbana wa lakal hamd as you're getting up. Then, when you're standing. Then you say Allahu Akbar. When you go into sajda, you say Subhana Rabbi al-A'la 3 times. Then you say Allahu Akbar. You sit with your hands on your lap. Then you say Allahu Akbar. You go back into sajda. You say Subhana Rabbi al-A'la another 3 times. And then you say Allahu Akbar and you stand completely. This time you do not say Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. You do not say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. You start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. You read Al-Fatiha. Then you read another surah. Then you go back into ruku. Up from ruku, you do the 2 sajdas, but this time you don't stand up, you sit. When you're sitting, your hands are on your lap, you read At-Tahiyyatu lillahi was-salawatu wat-tayyibatu to the end. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Then you stand up if it's a 4 rakat salah. If it's a 2 rakat salah, for example, if it's Fajr, you give salam. After you read the Allahumma salli, Allahumma barik, and you read the du'as, then you give salam. If it's a 4 rakat or a 3 rakat salah, you stand back up. Then you say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. You read Al-Fatiha, but you don't read anything afterwards if you're praying a fard. If you're praying a sunnah or a wajib, a witr, then you do recite a surah after the Fatiha, then you go into ruku. And then you do the 2 sajdas, and then you stand back up if you're not praying Maghrib. You stand back up, you complete your 4th rakat, exactly the same as the 3rd rakat, and then when you're in tashahhud, you say At-Tahiyyatu, you say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh, you say Allahumma salli, Allahumma barik, then you do Rabbana atina, Rabbana ighfirli. Then you give salam to the right, looking at your shoulder, salam to the left, looking at your shoulder. This is the correct way of praying. Now, if the Imam enters the masjid from the back, then each saf stands as he is passing them. If he enters from the front, as soon as they see him, the whole congregation stands. This is the respect to the Imam. Now, the function of an Imam. Leading the ritual prayer is superior to making the call to prayer. Okay? Which means if you've got 3 people, and you've got number 1, he's the most superior out of them. Then number 2, he's more superior than number 3. And number 3, who is less superior than both of them. The first one will lead the salah. The second one will do the adhan and the iqamah. And the third one will just follow them. Okay? So leading the ritual prayer is superior to making the call to prayer. Congregational prayer is an emphasized sunnah mu'akkada, with the importance of a mandatory action. Okay, so this is like a wajib for sane free men of sound health who are able to do so without a legal excuse that exempts them. Okay, the minimum number of people for a congregation prayer in a mosque or elsewhere is 1 male, even if it is a boy who has reached the age of tamyiz, discernment, plus the imam. So 2 people, okay? The imam and somebody else. This is enough for to do the emphasized sunnah. If one misses the congregational prayer in the mosque, it is recommended to seek it in another one unless one is in the sacred mosque, okay? Masjid al-Haram, in Haram al-Sharif, okay? If you miss the congregational prayer, you should go to another mosque and you try to reach that one in Mecca, or the Prophet's mosque sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina. If you're in these 2 mosques, you don't go to another mosque, okay? But if you're in a mosque, for example, Penny Lane, the Ottoman Mosque, anywhere else, then and you miss the salah, the congregation, you should try to reach the salah in another mosque. Conditions for the validity of leading the group prayer. Now, for someone to be a imam, what do they need? They need to be a Muslim, obviously, adult. They can't be a child. They need to be sane. And by adult, we mean the age of bulugh, which is usually boys will enter it around 13, 14, 15. Okay? They need to be sane. They need to be male. Like we said, females can't be imams. They need to be able to recite. This is important. Now, that he has memorized at least a verse of the Quran, so the prayer is valid. Okay? What did we say? Reading at least 1 ayah is fard. So he needs to know at least 1 ayah of the Quran. Free from causes that render one legally excused. Okay? So he should not be sahibul udhur, someone who was constantly bleeding and then he had to get wudu at the beginning of salah time. This udhur, we've explained it before. This person cannot lead the prayer because his wudu is an exempt wudu, as in it's not a proper wudu. Now we had a question. If husband and wife pray jama'ah at home, is this not valid because it is not 2 males? Did we say males? The minimum number of people in a congregation is 1 male plus the imam. Interesting. I'll have a look at that. From what I know, it's allowed, but since the book specifically said male, I'll have a quick look at that, inshallah, and I'll get back to you in the group chat. Free from causes that render one legally excused. Okay, free from the absence of one of the conditions of the ritual prayer. Okay, so if the imam should have everything, okay, he should be perfect in the sense that all of the conditions are met. He's not, he hasn't got an udhur, he's not bleeding, nothing weird's happening with him. For women of sound health, having a male imam is not a condition, okay? So women can pray behind a non-man imam. As for children and those not of sound health, being adult and of sound health, respectively, is not a condition for their imam. Rather, the general condition is that the state of the imam is stronger or equal to that of the followers, which means if the imam is somebody who, for example, so a man can never follow a woman imam, but a woman can follow a woman imam. Remember what we said about a woman being an imam. We said it's valid, but we said it's tahrim and makruh. So you're not allowed to, but if you did decide to do it, your prayer is valid. Okay? So a woman can follow another woman imam. And a child can follow another child as an imam. Okay? But the imam can never be lower than the follower. Okay? So a man can never follow a woman can't follow a child, right? As an imam. And somebody who can't get wudu, who has udhur, can't be the imam for those who have proper wudu. But if everybody has udhur, then they can be imam to each other. So the idea is that the imam should be the highest or equal to the jama'ah. That's why if somebody cannot stand and they have to pray sitting down, they cannot be the imam for those behind him because they can stand. Okay? Conditions for the validity of being a follower. The follower has an intention to follow his imam simultaneously with the utterance of the tahrima. Okay? This intention should be at the beginning of salah. Okay, so when you're saying Allahu Akbar, you should have this intention. You can't adopt this intention later on. Okay, so if you've started and then you realized, oh, there's a jama'ah going on, you can't suddenly start following them. This intention has to be made during the tahrima. Even if this is fulfilled in a way that takes the ruling of simultaneously, such as the two are not separated by something alien to the prayer. In other than the funeral prayer, okay, so in anything other than the janazah, a male imam must attend being the imam of a male imam must intend being the imam of women in order for the prayer of his female followers to be valid. We already talked about this last time. We said the imam has to make intention for the women. Otherwise, the women are not allowed to follow, their salah is invalid. This is for anything other than the funeral prayer, because in the funeral prayer there are no ruku and no sajda. The follower's heel is not further forward than the imam's heel. We already said this. The follower joins the imam in the performance of any part of the actual obligatory integrals. So if the imam does ruku, you do ruku. If the imam does sajda, you do sajda. If you miss it, you have to make it up, otherwise your salah is invalid. When shortening a prayer, which usually has 4 units to 2 units, and one is praying in a city or village, but not outside the two, before or after completing his prayer, the follower must know whether his imam is a traveler or non-traveler. Okay? So, when you're praying behind somebody, by the end of salah, you need to know whether he's a traveler or not. Otherwise, what's going to happen? He's going to pray 2, but you're not a traveler. You're going to end up praying 2. Okay? So for you to pray the proper amount of rak'ahs, you need to know whether the imam is safari or not. Because if he gives salam and you get up and you just think that you've missed a couple of rak'ahs, you haven't realized that he's only prayed 2. You think you've missed 2 rak'ahs, but in fact he's only prayed 2 rak'ahs because he's a safari. Okay? Because you don't know this, your salah is invalid because you're going to end up praying wrong. Okay? But if you do know this, what do? Right? The way you pray with the Safari Imam is the Imam will give salam at the 2 rak'ahs, okay, at the second rak'ah. If you are muqim and you need to pray 4, you stand up, okay, you don't read anything. You stay standing long enough to read Fatiha. Okay, but you don't actually read it because technically you have an imam. Okay, so you're doing the 3rd rak'ah completely silent. You're just standing there long enough to read al-Fatiha, and then you go into ruku. You say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. You get up. You say Sami Allahu liman hamida Rabbana lakal hamd. You go into sajda. You say Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. The 4th rakat again silent. You wait long enough to read Fatiha, but you don't actually read the Fatiha. Then you go into ruku, then up, then sajda, and you finish your salah with the at-tahiyyatu, salli barik, and the du'as. Okay, and then you finish your salah. Now, can Hanafi women pray behind a female imam as well? Like we said, yes, they can. The prayer would be valid, but it's not allowed. The whole practice isn't allowed. It's valid, but it's not allowed. Okay, so for a woman to be an imam is not allowed, and for you to follow her is like you supporting this thing, which shouldn't be happening. So no, you shouldn't follow the lady if she's being an imam. You should pray separately. We get this question quite a bit when the jama'ah is mixed with Shafi'is and Hanafis, because Shafi'is are allowed, women are allowed to be the imam for other women, and they'll do this openly. And the Hanafi women, they'll feel left out and they'll want to join the congregation. We say not to follow the congregation because in our madhab it's tahrim and makruh. Okay, not to join them, but for her to be the imam. The imam is not performing an obligatory prayer other than the obligatory prayer being performed by the follower. Okay, if the imam's praying asr and you're praying dhuhr, you can't follow the imam. It doesn't make sense. For a prayer comprising 4 units and being prayed after its prescribed time has expired, the Imam must not be a non-traveler when the follower is a traveler. Okay. For a prayer comprising 4 units, so that is Dhuhr, Asr, and Isha, and being prayed after its prescribed time, so you've missed it. Okay, it's Qada. The Imam must not be a non-traveler when the follower is a traveler. Why? Because the follower, when he sits down after the second raka'ah, okay, pay attention because this is really smart. This is how the Hanafi jurisprudence works. This is our usul fiqh, okay? This is usul fiqh at play here. So let's say the Imam has missed the Imam has missed Dhuhr, and you have missed Dhuhr, okay? You were a traveler, the Imam wasn't a traveler. That person cannot be your Imam when you're making up that prayer together. The reason being is, what did we say? What was the rule? The rule was the Imam has to be above, always. Okay? Above or equal to you as a follower. The follower cannot be above the Imam. So how does a non-traveler become above of a traveler? Not because of the 4 rak'ahs, but because in the first sitting, the Imam's first sitting is what? Wajib. But for you, it's fard, because you only had to pray 2. Because your first sitting is fard and the Imam's first sitting is wajib, he's not allowed to be your Imam, because what you're doing is a fard and what he's doing is a wajib. He cannot lead you. You are above him. Understood? That's why these rules are important. The Imam himself was not a latecomer to a previous congregational prayer. Okay, so you cannot be the Imam if you are making up your missed raka'ahs. Other madhabs do this. For example, the Shafi'is, what they'll do, they miss the jama'ah, right? The Imam has given salam, but there's somebody who's missed a raka'ah and he's praying a raka'ah. He'll go behind him and he'll follow him. When he's finished and he's still praying, another person will come and he'll follow him. So this jama'ah can actually carry on for like an hour if somebody keeps coming and following the other guy. Okay, but in the Hanafi, this doesn't work. The Imam and the rows of the male congregation are not separated by. Now, this is very important. You have to make sure that any masjid you go to are following these rules, okay? Because a lot of people that open up masjids, they have no idea of these rules, I'm telling you. A lot of them, they are very nice Muslims. They have very good intentions, but they don't know these rules, okay? A row of females containing more than 3 ladies and the Imam has intended to lead them in prayer, okay? So women cannot be in front of other men. So over here it says more than 3 ladies. Some say only 1 lady is enough to ruin everything, but if there's 3 ladies in front of you and your Imam, then your salah is invalid, okay? So we can take this ruling as 3 ladies. A river in which a small vessel may pass, okay? So if it's a small river, then that's fine. But if it's a river where a small vessel can pass, like a canoe, okay, can pass, then we count that as 2 separate places. And you can't pray in a separate place of the Imam, okay? So this isn't a problem for masjids. Usually there's no river in the middle of a masjid. A non-closed pathway upon which carts pass, as we no longer have adjoining rows. So if you're praying on one pavement, then there's a road and the jama'ah is praying on the other pavement. Because of that road, you're considered to be in different places, okay? If that road isn't closed off, if that road is closed off, then you should be praying on the road anyways, okay? A large void in a desert, or a large 40 cubits, approximately around 20 meters, house that would suffice for 2 or more rows, except when the rows are adjoined, okay? So if there is an emptiness between the rows and there's a house there, okay? So there's a house between you and the Imam. Now, so a large house would stop you from being able to follow the Imam, okay? Unless the rows are joined, okay? So if you've still got like one person behind another person in the alleyway, and then it reaches you. So let's say you're praying. Do we open? So how long is this left? Because we've sort of run out of time. There's still quite a bit. Okay. But these are important. So what I'll do, okay, I'll explain this one and then we'll stop. So let's quickly do this. And do... Okay. So let's say the Imam is here. And there's a saf. There's another saf. And then right over here, there's a building. Okay. If you are praying here, okay, anyone praying on this saf, their salah is invalid. Okay. Unless you've still got people praying here. Okay. If you've got people praying on the sides, okay, then we count that as joined. So this building wouldn't stop you from following this Imam. But if there's no one praying on the sides and there's a huge building in between you and the Imam, then you can't follow this Imam. That's what it's saying. Okay. So we'll end here, inshallah. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.